So next up is Timothy Lane. He's going to talk to us about a number of things.
You got my slideshow ready? I do have a slideshow, if it's somewhere in there. There it is. All right. Here, let me use the microphone. That would be a good idea.
There should be a handheld mic if you like to.
Oh, if I like to wander? All right.
Get away somewhere. If you like.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, that is my voice. All right, cool. So yeah, I chose this picture because it is a pretty good gestalt of the species, right? It's AI generated, but you know, let me throw this around. Don't trust the robots. So I grow in Massachusetts. I'm in USDA Zone 6B now, I believe. Everyone knows this map, right? We've all seen it. It's the minimum lows of a given region. The seasonality is reflected generally in the climate and ecology, but there's a bunch of other variables that aren't often talked about. Climate is a conglomeration of things, right? Including cloud cover, rainfall, water, sunlight. These are some other variables that I encourage people to think about. Altitude, things like solar radiation, season length, the length of season by latitude, the solar intensity by latitude. Right? So these are all things that affect growing pawpaws in the north, which is where I grow. So rootstock is, as we know, it's not really standardized in pawpaws. It's a wild card. And I will put out there that we should be looking at higher latitude, colder climate roots for northern climate growing, such as New York, Ontario, perhaps northern Michigan for sourcing. And I anticipate these to be earlier waking up, earlier flowering, longer seasonal window from flowering to ripe fruit, and they may be naturally accustomed to the soil and light conditions. We don't exactly know what rootstock influence is, but these are things that I have been thinking about. Vigor in rootstock is important. I tend to choose vigorous individuals for my understock where I grow. Some cultivars are slow and they require that extra boost. And vigor is something that is expressed not only in height, but also in leaf node distance, leaf density, and how fast a tree gains its caliper, right? So these three things together kind of constitute vigor. Now, winter resistance, for me at my latitude, I'm just shy of the 42nd latitude, it's not really an issue for me. The dormancy of pawpaws is very deep. They go into zone 4. I know Buzz Ferver was growing them in zone 4B, I believe, for years, and he's overwintered successfully for like a decade now. So they're very hardy. Another thing to consider is the roots uninsulated by the soil and the warmth of the earth. They tend to die below a certain temperature, and I'm guessing that it's between 20 and 24 degrees Fahrenheit, based on the fact that that's when my own ones freeze out if I accidentally leave them outside, right? We've all done that at some point. Rootstock can affect things like fruit size, and I mention this because there was a study out of KSU that I was reading, and it said that when they used the seedlings of individuals with larger fruit, the fruits produced by that understock were larger themselves, and they measured the weights of those fruit. So that's something that rootstock can affect. It will affect when the trees wake up in spring, like the soil temperature response. When they flower, it could affect the wood ripening habits or the vigor of grafts overall. We don't know. These are things to think about. I tell people use the best roots that you have. Offspring of big fruit and vigorous character are probably the most ideal. And I will add, I'll go out on a limb and probably say that mycorrhizae are of significant importance. We don't know how much importance, but I do know that looking laterally at other more tropical anonas, these are species that are very dependent on their mycorrhizae, and so for the Asimina, I would presume to be as well. Sorry if I'm going a little fast or a little pressed for time, but so latitude is a limiting factor in summer heat hours, but it's not just the latitude that you're at. The intensity of sunlight changes depending on how far up the globe you are, right? So we have less solar irradiance as well. I know people are talking about summer heat hours, but we also have to consider solar irradiance. I believe it's mostly in marine biology. They use something called the PI curve, a light response curve, which is an empirical relationship between solar irradiance and photosynthesis. I won't go into detail about that, but higher latitude, shorter summers, less solar intensity, less energy entering the system overall in the north. This means shorter season cultivars. All of it points to growing shorter season cultivars. Now, something about the trees, that they naturally attenuate to solar conditions. This is something they do biologically. Light intensity fluctuates naturally due to canopy cover, geography, seasonality, time of day. They've evolved complex mechanisms to perceive and respond to changes in light intensity, enabling them to maximize photosynthesis while minimizing damage from any excess. So plants have certain fixed genetic capacities, and within that, there is a morphological plasticity. Trees can adjust their leaf area, stem elongation, other features to optimize light capture. And this is most famously known in sun leaves versus shade leaves. And I see this a lot in the tropics, actually. You'll see a single species can have vastly different canopy in the overstory than in the understory. So bigger leaves in the understory, usually. Photosynthetic plasticity, they can adjust their photosynthetic pigment content to adapt to lower or higher irradiance environments. This is pretty cool. In pawpaws, I was at James Dingus's place the other day, and I saw that his NC1s were indeed deep dark green. That's characteristic of that cultivar. However, my trees are the same color as all of my other trees, and I presume that this is because of attenuation to the climate that I'm at. These are just assumptions, anecdotes, but these are informed in to some degree. As understory low-light seedlings, pawpaws appear to utilize sunflex to their advantage. So that's that diffused, dappled light that comes through the forest canopies and changes throughout the day. Pawpaws are very good at exploiting that. And an interesting tidbit, as I was reading, the photosynthetic activity is directly proportional to light intensity when the temperature is below 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So I would posture that around 86 degrees Fahrenheit is an ideal growing temperature for pawpaws. You go above that and things get a little more complicated. So let's get into the northerly cultivars. Now, I've been growing since 2012. I moved into my new place in 2011. 2012, I put in a Shenandoah and an Allegheny, and little did I know that my entire front yard would eventually be all pawpaws. I have 70 trees now. 2 of every cultivar that I do to try and observe differences between individual trees. But bear in mind that I'm just a single data point, one person in one part of the world. These are the cultivars that do well for me. Maria's Joy, that's one of Lehman's. It is an early cultivar, very early actually, right alongside Allegheny. It has not a creamy light flavor like some people describe, not at my latitude. At my latitude, it gets a punchier, almost more bubblegum-like flavor, and that's an interesting thing. My flavor descriptions are different from people who grow it down south. Allegheny, that one's early as well. I get those around early to mid-September every year. Rappahannock, that one has not fruited for me yet, but I'll know very shortly. Benson, I definitely recommend for northern growers. Benson does very well for me. It's a big, beautiful fruit, deep orange flesh, absolutely delicious. Shenandoah, that's an early bloomer and a late bloomer. I recommend it for people who like to pollinate all of their trees with a single individual. Shenandoah is good for that. Kentucky Champion, early mid. Tallahatchie is early to mid. Some people say it's earlier. I kind of characterize it as more mid-season. VE21, that one has a nice banana musk flavor going on. That's early to mid. Naomi's Delicious, there were some samples out there earlier. That one is early to mid, and it's a nice big puffy fruit. It's mild. It's very good. Benny's Favorite, that one's mid. KSU Atwood is mid, with a little bit of fruit coming in early season for me as well. And I do recommend KSU Atwood for flavor alone. It is wonderfully flavored. There are some cultivars coming out of Iowa. You can see I've colored in areas that are near my latitude as the curve of the earth goes. These ones ripen up for me. Halvin is a wild selection. It makes 10 to 12 ounce fruits. It's remarkably like Tallahatchie in flavor profile. When I compare Tallahatchie to other cultivars, I group it in with Halvin, Green River Belle, and one other that I can't recall at the moment. But they're all very similar in flavor. It's early to mid-season, and unlike Tallahatchie, which bears in these big wagon wheel hands, Halvin tends to bear singly or in 2s and 3s. Now, northern-derived wild cultivars make ideal climate-compatible selections for the north and for rootstock, in my opinion. And I put the word wild in quotes because I'm a strong believer that, like the tropical Annonas, pawpaws are indigenous heritage that we are picking up the pieces of years later. Potomac is hit or miss in my climate. Every year I get a few good Potomacs and a few not good Potomacs. I'm a big fan of this cultivar. I love it. It's huge, fleshy, wonderful melony flavor. It bears fruit of uneven or non-uniform size, but you get a few really big fruits on it. It's a sister of Susquehanna. Its flavor is more subdued than Susquehanna. If you're in an area where you can grow this, and that would be just south of me, I don't recommend it for where I am, but in the more southerly locations, it is fantastic. Personal favorites. Benny's favorite. This one, I understand why it was picked. It has a lot of that banana musk, but also some of the high-end, lighter, fruitier flavors as well. KSU Benson, I obviously love that one. Allegheny, this is I call it the connoisseur's pawpaw because it has a very fine flavor. It's citrusy almost. I like to eat it with goat Gouda cheese. It's very good with that. And Tallahatchie, of course. It's a smaller fruit, but it's very, very delicious. Light and fruity end of the flavor spectrum, not a lot of banana musk. So this is some of the iffy cultivars in my region. And I like to use Prima as an example. It makes a big, beautiful fruit. You look at my trees and you see these big softball-sized fruits, right? These are all pictures of my trees, by the way. It's lackluster where I'm at. And bad fruit I characterize as having almost no flavor, aroma, sugar, and the flesh color is often pale, and these are all things that are dictated by solar intensity and seasonal duration. But I also find that the seeds will mature regardless of the fruit quality, and so I use them as rootstock mostly. These are untested. I have been acquiring them to test. I've been testing about 35 different cultivars so far. About half of them are fruiting age right now. I'm very much looking forward to Tom Wall's newer cultivars, Corner Pocket, Jim's Nebula, Nebulous, Cider Patch, Jennifer's Twin, and others. Pawpaws will ripen their wood fairly quickly at my latitude, so even growth that begins in early August seems to ripen up well enough to make it through winter. North of me, however, I've heard reports of wood failing to ripen for dormancy, right? So that can be an issue in the Zone 4 climates higher up on the earth. Wood ripening is something that is constantly on my mind in terms of growing farther north. Overfeeding can be an issue, or I use nitrogen only in spring. And it's important to know that a tree is easy for a tree to lose its dormancy in spring. So when you have those quote-unquote Indian summers, that can bring them out of dormancy, and then to get back into dormancy, they can take 24 hours to gain 1 degree of temperature back. So it's important to think about these things. Yeah, so the late winter, early spring fluctuations may pose the most problems in northern climates. I consider painting the trunks white to be a half measure. The other half of that would be selecting seed stock that is attenuated to the soil conditions of your area. So these are, and the last one, heavy wet snow. I know a grower in New Hampshire doesn't plant his trees out until they're a certain height, and that's because he has heavy wet snow breaking his branches. That's not something that I think about where I'm at, but where he is, it's a problem. Planting in the north. All right, so I've got a YouTube channel, obviously, and this is how I plant. I do full sun. Shade is unnecessary after the second or first year even. They'll take full sun after they've hardened off their first round of growth. I like to break up any hard soils. They don't like that. Water, water, water. If you got drip irrigation, that's always beneficial. I like to encourage the fine, fleshy feeder roots to colonize the soil under the canopy and beyond. and that includes mulching, weeding, feeding. I feed my trees a lot of quail manure compost. They love that, especially mixed with sand and wood chips. They seem to really thrive on that. NPK, I use 1257 as a guideline, just as a concept for pawpaws. Other people, you may use 10-10-10 or whatever. That's just the one that I use as a concept. Micronutrients, the riparian soils to which they're native are heavy in things like calcium, manganese, sulfur, iron, all of these micronutrients that they need. You'll find that fruiting heavily, pawpaws will tax many soils, and I found this true in the north. Fruiting heavily, they seem to tax soils eventually after about 3 years. So I make compost donuts around the feeder root area as the trees mature. Not like big tall ones, but I keep replenishing the soil as much as I can for them. So, like I said, I'm just one grower in a sea of growing experiences, and I'm here to share some of them with you. One data point, bear that in mind, assimilate what I've said into your grow practices, and thank you for having me.
So do we have any questions for our speakers? We got a question in the back.
My YouTube channel is Aku Farm, and it's more of an outlet than an inlet. So if you know me, Aku Farm is my website as well, aku.farm. You can find me there too. The YouTube channel's linked. OCKOO. It's short for Akukengansett, which is the hill that I live on and plant on. So Native American names.
Other questions? Yes.
You're looking towards sort of early breaking of these to get long season. Are you having any issues then with freeze out on blossoms?
That's a good question. I've only had that issue 1 year. It was a very late freeze. It's not an issue where I am because I'm closer to the seashore. I get a little bit of that maritime climate that protects me. So no, I have not had that issue, but that would be an issue for northern growers to be concerned about for sure. Yeah.
If you grow from seed, when do you place them in the ground? Do you give them a year to grow in pots first to a certain size?
Yeah, so I start all of my trees in bins. You know, I throw like 100 seeds in a bin, let them grow for a year, and then I start potting them out individually to grow another year. And when they're about 2 or 3 feet tall and showing some vigor, I'll plant the vigorous ones out, and that's how I do that. Any more questions? Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people tell the difference between wild seed, select seed, and premium seed. Mm-hmm. Could you sort of explain the difference between?
All right. So premium seed is cultivar crosses. So anything that I plant in my orchard, I would consider a premium seed, and that's because it crossed with another cultivar of note. Right, so I don't actually have any junk trees in my orchard at all. No, nothing wild. It's all premium cultivars, more modern ones, and that is where the premium seeds come from. Wild seeds could be anything that you find in the woods, pretty much, and those are still good for rootstock, although you won't know the qualities of the rootstock influence on the fruit. So. More questions? Yeah, sure.
Just it's an anecdote from my own breeding, orchard number 1. There was a tree which was in the first row. It had a number 154. And it was I loved the flavor best of everything in the orchard. But it was my method to then everything I liked to propagate, to graft onto other rootstocks in the orchard. And the 154 never tasted the same once I grafted it, and it didn't even make it into the final cut for what I've released. You cannot assume that grafting is going to give you the same thing as the original tree.
Very important. Thank you, Neil. All right. Thank you, everyone. It's good to be among friends.
Thank you, Tim. And I think Dr. Rom mentioned this at the beginning, but we're going to be inviting all the speakers to, if they want to submit to be in the proceedings, and actually be published in Hort Science or Hort Technology, one or the other. And so I know we did that after the last conference. So we're hoping maybe Ketter and a number of the other speakers will publish this information so it gets out there and gets archived, because it's really critical that we get these observations out there. And so that said, we are at lunch, and so I've been told that lunch is out there. There are already some posters that are set up out there, so if you want to go look at the posters, but there's going to be a poster session with the authors requested to be present at the posters later on and this afternoon. But have lunch, and we will reconvene at 1 o'clock. Okay?